The next to testify was Arthur Henry Rostron, captain of the Carpathia. The Carpathia was the only ship to arrive in time to save drifting survivors. Captain Rostron would later be hailed as a true hero.
Please give your full name and address.
Arthur Henry Rostron, Woodville, Victoria Road, Crosby, Liverpool.
What is your business, Captain?
Seaman.
How long have you been engaged in the business?
27 years.
What positions have you filled?
Every rank in the merchant service, up to captain.
You are now captain of the Carpathia?
I am now the captain of the Carpathia Cunard line.
How long have you been captain of the Carpathia?
My appointment on the Carpathia dates from the 18th of January of this year.
What day did you sail with the Carpathia from New York last?
The 11th of April.
And where were you headed?
We were bound for Liverpool, Genoa, Naples, Trieste, and Fiume.
How many passengers did you have on board the Carpathia when you sailed from New York?
151st, 52nd, and about 560 or 575 third. That is approximately.
What time of day did you leave New York?
At noon on Thursday.
I wish you would tell the committee what occurred after that day, as nearly as you can, up to the present time.
We backed out from the dock at noon on Thursday. From that time up to Sunday midnight, we had fine, clear weather, and everything was going on without any trouble of any kind. At 12:35 a.m. on Monday, I was informed of the urgent distress signal from the Titanic.
By whom?
By our wireless operator, and also by the first officer. The wireless officer had taken the message and run with it up to the bridge, and gave it to the first officer who was in charge, with the junior officer with him, and both ran down the ladder to my door and called me. I'd only just turned in. It was an urgent distress signal from the Titanic, requiring immediate assistance and giving me his position. The position of the Titanic at the time was 41 degrees 46 north, 50 degrees 14 west. I cannot give you our correct position, but we were then...
Did you give the hour?
Yes, at 12:35. That was our apparent time. I can give you the New York time, if you would rather have it.
Yes, please do so.
The New York time at 12:35 was 10:45 p.m. Sunday night. Immediately on getting the message, I gave the order to turn the ship around, and immediately I'd given that order, I asked the operator if he was absolutely sure it was a distress signal from the Titanic.
Just what was the signal?
I did not ask him. He simply told me that he had received a distress signal from the Titanic requiring immediate assistance and gave me his position. And he assured me he was absolutely certain of the message. In the meantime, I was dressing, and I picked up our position on my chart and set a course to pick up the Titanic. The course was north 52 degrees west true, 58 miles from my position. I sent for the chief engineer. In the meantime, I was dressing and seeing the ship put on her course. The engineer came up. I told him to call another watch of stokers and make all possible speed to the Titanic, as she was in trouble. He ran down immediately and told me my orders would be carried out at once. After that, I gave the first officer, who was in charge of the bridge, orders to knock off all work the men were doing on deck and prepare all our lifeboats, take out the spare gear, and have them all ready for turning outboard. Immediately I had done that, I sent for the heads of the different departments, the English doctor, the purser, and the chief steward, and they came to my cabin, and then I issued my orders. I do not know whether you care to hear what my orders were exactly.
Yes, sir, we would like to hear them.
As a matter of fact, I have them all written down here. We carry an English doctor, an Italian doctor, and a Hungarian doctor. My orders were these. English doctor with assistance to remain in first-class dining room. Italian doctor with assistance to remain in second-class dining room. Hungarian doctor with assistance to remain in third-class dining room. Each doctor to have supplies of restorative stimulants and everything to hand for immediate needs of probable wounded or sick. Purser with Assistant Purser-in-Chief Steward to receive the passengers, etc., at different gangways, controlling our own stewards and assisting all the Titanic passengers to the dining room, etc. Also to get Christian and surnames of all survivors as soon as possible to send by wireless. Inspector, steerage stewards and master-at-arms to control our own steerage passengers and keep them out of the third-class dining hall, and also to keep them out of the way and off the deck to prevent confusion. Chief steward, that all hands would be called, and to have coffee, etc., ready to serve out to our crew. Have coffee, tea, soup, etc., in each salon, blankets and salons at the gangways, and some for the boats. To see all rescued cared for, and immediate wants attended to. My cabin and all officials' cabins to be given up. Smoke rooms, library, etc., dining rooms would be utilized to accommodate the survivors. All spare berths in steerage to be utilized for Titanic's passengers, and get all our own steerage passengers grouped together. Stewards to be placed in each alleyway to reassure our own passengers should they inquire about a noise in getting our boats out, etc., or the working of engines. To all, I strictly enjoined the necessity for order, discipline, and quietness, and to avoid all confusion. Chief and first officers, all the hands to be called, get coffee, etc. Prepare and swing out all boats. All gangway doors to be opened. Electric sprays in each gangway and over the side. A block with line rove hooked in each gangway. A chair sling at each gangway for getting up sick or wounded. Bosun's chairs, pilot ladders and canvas ash bags to be at each gangway, the canvas ash bags for children. I may state that canvas and bags were of great assistance in getting the infants and children aboard. Cargo falls with both ends clear, bowlines in the ends and bights secured along ship's side for boat ropes or to help the people up. Heaving lines distributed along the ship's side, and gaskets handy near gangways for lashing people in chairs, etc. Forward derricks topped and rigged, and steam on winches. Also told off officers for different stations and for certain eventualities. Ordered company's rockets to be fired at 2:45 a.m. and every quarter of an hour after to reassure Titanic. This is a copy of what I'm sending to our own company.
We would like to have you leave a copy of that with the committee, if you can.
Yes, sir. I shall do it with pleasure. One more thing. As each official saw everything in readiness, he reported to me personally on the bridge that all my orders were carried out, enumerating the same and that everything was in readiness. This was at 3:45. That was a quarter of an hour before we got up to the scene of the disaster. The details of all the work I left to several officials, and I'm glad to say they were most efficiently carried out.
I should judge from what you say that you made 19.5 knots from the time you got the signal of distress from the Titanic until you reached the scene of the wreck or loss.
No, it was 58 miles, and it took us 3.5 hours. At 2:40, I saw a flare about half a point on the port bow, and immediately took it for granted that it was the Titanic itself, and I remarked that she must still be afloat, as I knew we were a long way off, and it seemed so high. However, soon after seeing the flare, I made out an iceberg about a point on the port bow, to which I had to port to keep well clear of. Knowing that the Titanic had struck ice, of course I had to take extra care and every precaution to keep clear of anything that might look like ice. Between 2:45 and 4 o'clock, the time I stopped my engines, we were passing ice on every side and making them ahead and having to alter our course several times to clear the bergs. At 4:10, I got the first boat alongside. Previous to getting the first boat alongside, however, I saw an iceberg close to me right ahead, and I had to starboard to get out of the way. And I picked him up on the side of the ship. I'm on the scene of action, 4:10, with the first boat alongside.
You are picking up these people now?
Yes.
Please describe that in your own way.
We picked up the first boat, and the boat was in charge of an officer. I saw that he was not under full control of this boat, and the officer sung out to me that he had only one seaman in the boat, so I had to maneuver the ship to get as close to the boat as possible, as I knew well it would be difficult to do the pulling. However, they got alongside, and they got them up all right. By the time we had the first boat's people, it was breaking day, and then I could see the remaining boats all around, within an area of about 4 miles. I also saw icebergs all around me. There were about 20 icebergs that would be anywhere from about 150 to 200 feet high, and numerous smaller bergs. Also numerous what we call growlers. You would not call them bergs. They were anywhere from 10 to 12 feet high and 10 to 15 feet long above the water. I maneuvered the ship, and we gradually got all the boats together. We got all the boats alongside and all the people up aboard by 8:30. I was very close to where the Titanic must have gone down, as there was a lot of hardly wreckage, but small pieces of broken-up stuff, nothing in the way of anything large. At 8 o'clock, the Leyland Line steamer California hove up, and we exchanged messages. I gave them the notes by semaphore about the Titanic going down and that I had got all the passengers from the boats. But we were not quite sure that we could account for all the boats. I told them, "Think one boat still unaccounted for." He then asked me if he should search around, and I said, "Yes, please." It was then 10:50. I want to go back again a little bit. At 8:30, I asked for the purser and told him that I wanted to hold a service. A short prayer of thankfulness for those rescued, and a short burial service for those who were lost. I consulted Mr. Ismay. I ran down for a moment and told them that I wished to do this, and Mr. Ismay left everything in my hands. I then got an Episcopal clergyman, one of our passengers, and asked him if he would do this for me, which he did willingly. And while they were holding the service, I was on the bridge, of course, and I maneuvered around the scene of the wreckage, and we saw nothing except one body.
Floating?
Floating, sir.
Was it male or female?
Male. It appeared to me to be one of the crew. He was about 100 yards from the ship. We could see quite distinctly and saw that he was absolutely dead. He was lying on his side, and his head was awash. Of course, he could not possibly have been alive and remain in that position. I did not take him aboard. For one reason, the Titanic's passengers were then knocking about the deckouts, and they were brought on board. Another man was brought up. I think he was one of the crew, who died that morning about 10 o'clock, I think, and he, with the other 3, were buried at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
At sea?
At sea.
Did they have anything on their persons by which they could be identified?
One of my officers and the Titanic's officers identified the bodies as far as possible and took everything from them that could be of the slightest clue or use. Nothing was left but their clothes. There was very little taken, of course, but as regards details, I cannot give you much. I've been too busy.
You have not the names of the men?
We have the names.
Were they men or women?
Men. There were several ladies in the boats. They were slightly injured about the arms and things of the kind, of course. Although I must say, from the very start, all these people behaved magnificently. As each boat came alongside, everyone was calm, and they kept perfectly still in their boats. They were quiet and orderly, and each person came up the ladder or was pulled up in turn as they were told off. There was no confusion whatever among the passengers. They behaved magnificently, every one of them.
Did you see any bodies afloat except as those you have described?
Only one. No more. No others.
I assume you kept watch to see whether there were any people afloat?
Precisely. I was cruising all around the vicinity of the disaster.
How long did you cruise around there?
Half an hour.
Have you any idea how much depth of water there was about that point?
Yes, about 2,000 and odd fathoms.
2,000 and odd fathoms.
Yes, I looked on the chart.
Have you concluded that you did not see the ill-fated ship at all?
Oh, no. We arrived an hour and a half after she went down, after the last of her was seen.
What was the last message you had from the ship?
Engine room nearly full.
At what hour was that?
That would have been around 1 o'clock. That would be 25 minutes later.
Was that all?
That was the last message we got. It was either engine room nearly full or engine room full or engine room filling. The exact words I could not give you. The impression was quite enough for me as to the condition the ship was in.
And you then told them how near you were?
Yes. From the very first I sent a message to the Titanic, telling them, coming immediately to your assistance. Expect to arrive 4:30. No, it was expect to arrive in 4 hours, because I had not then got up full speed.
Did you personally know the captain of the Titanic?
I knew him, yes.
How long have you known him?
I had met him 15 years ago. I had only met him 3 times altogether.
In your company, who is the master of the ship at sea?
The captain.
In absolute control?
In absolute control, legal and otherwise. No one can interfere.
I suppose, had this not been so, you would not have felt it proper to have gone off course quite so far.
Quite so.
Are there prescribed routes at sea that are so definite in their character as to be well understood by mariners?
They are. I may state this, that the position given to me by the Titanic was absolutely correct, and she was absolutely on her track, bound for New York.
What would you call the course, Captain, that the Titanic was taking for New York, as to whether it would be northerly or southerly?
He was on the southerly route.
Do you regard the route he was taking as entirely practical and appropriate at this time of the year?
Quite so. This is most exceptional.
Having the warnings that icebergs were in the vicinity, could he, under those circumstances, have changed his course somewhat to avoid them?
That is impossible for me to tell. All I know is that he was on the track of the western-bound steamers, on his proper track, where he ought to have been.
Is not that the shortest route from Liverpool to New York?
No, it is the longest.
The longest?
Yes, sir.
Would you regard the course taken by the Titanic in this trial trip as appropriate and safe and wise at the time of the year?
Quite so.
What would be a safe, reasonable speed for a vessel of that size on such a course and in proximity of icebergs?
Of course, I do not know the ship. I know absolutely nothing about her.
How would you have felt yourself about it? Suppose you had been taking that course with your ship. How fast would you have felt it prudent to go in such a situation?
I can only tell you this, gentlemen. I knew there was ice about. I knew the Titanic had struck ice. Therefore, I was prepared to be in the vicinity of ice when I was getting near him, because if he had struck a berg and I was going to his position, I knew very well that there must be ice about. I went full speed, all we could.
You went full speed?
I did. I doubled my lookouts and took extra precautions and exerted extra vigilance. Every possible care was taken.
You had a smaller ship, however, and it would respond more readily to a signal?
No, sir, it would not. I do not maintain that for one moment.
How many lifeboats do you carry on the Carpathia?
We carry 20.
Do you carry 20 in obedience to certain regulations of the British Board of Trade?
I think it is 20, yes.
Are these regulations of the British Board of Trade new regulations or old regulations?
They are of recent date.
The fact that under these regulations you are obliged to carry 20 lifeboats and the Titanic was only obliged to carry 20 with her additional tonnage indicates either that these regulations were prescribed long ago.
No, sir, it has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is the ship itself. These ships are built nowadays to be practically unsinkable, and each ship is supposed to be a lifeboat in itself. The boats are merely supposed to be put on as a standby. The ships are supposed to be built, and the naval architects say they are, unsinkable under certain conditions. What the exact conditions are, I do not know, as to whether it is with alternate compartments full or what it may be. That is why in our ship we carry more lifeboats, for the simple reason that we are built differently from the Titanic, differently constructed.
You say the captain of the ship is vested ordinarily with absolute control and discretion over the movements of the vessel.
Absolutely. I wish to qualify that, however. By law, the captain of the vessel has absolute control, but Suppose we got orders from the owner of the vessel to a certain thing and we did not carry it out. The only thing then is that we are liable to dismissal.
Captain, is it customary to take orders from a director or a general officer of the company aboard?
No, sir.
From whom do you take orders?
From no one.
Aboard ship?
At sea, immediately I leave port until I arrive at port, the captain is in absolute control and takes orders from no one. I have never known it in our company or any other big company when a director or managing owner would issue orders on that ship. It matters not who comes on board that ship. They are either passengers or crew. There is no official status and no authority whatever with them.
You say, Captain, that you ran under a full head of steam toward the Titanic.
I can confess this much, that if I had known at the time that there was so much ice about, I should not. But I was right in it then. There was one other consideration. Although I was running a risk with my own ship and my own passengers, I also had to consider what I was going for.
To save the lives of others?
Yes, I had to consider the lives of others.
You were prompted by your interest in humanity?
Absolutely.
And you took the chance?
It was hardly a chance. Of course it was a chance, but at the same time I knew quite what I was doing. I considered that I was perfectly free and that I was perfectly right in what I did.
I suppose no criticism has been passed upon you.
No.
In fact, I think I may say for my associates that your conduct deserves the highest praise.
I thank you, sir.
Did your wireless fail you at all?
Never. The only thing was that we were not fitted up with a long-distance installation.
How far can you communicate?
Under good conditions, 200 miles. We only reckon under ordinary conditions on 150 miles. Fog, mist, haze, snow, or any other unfavorable weather conditions make it so that we may not get more than 90 to 100 miles.
It was rather accidental, then, that you happened to be within the radius of your instrument when you got the Titanic.
Yes, we were only 58 miles away then.
It was providential?
It was absolutely providential. I will tell you this, that the wireless operator was in the cabin at the time, not on official business at all, but just simply listening as he was undressing. He was unlacing his boots at the time. He had this apparatus on his ear, and the message came. In 10 minutes, maybe he would have been in bed, and we would never have heard the message.
It was a very remarkable coincidence.
It was very remarkable, and as I say, the whole thing was providential, as regards our being able to get there in time.